nearly $2 billion stock sale are Google insiders. Google is actually a mathematical term meaning a number followed by a long string of zeros. That may also describe the amount of money the stock sale could bring Google's founders.
So really going public is serving their own needs, which is to monetize shareholders' wealth.
But the founders insist they have no intention of cashing in. They say it's another way Google is different. It's a company that will focus on the long term.
And that's very different than the quick get-rich schemes of the 1990s, where everyone was frankly corrupted by the prospect of fast cash.
There may be one other reason Google is selling shares directly to the public. If millions of internet users are also Google stockholders, they are likely to remain Google users. John Blackstone, CBS News, Silicon Valley.
You're watching Newsworld International.
Tonight, on the defensive.
It is an exceptional, isolated, we hope an isolated case.
And on the attack.
This does not appear to be an isolated incident.
The U.S. prisoner abuse scandal widens. The Denton case.
First is the worst thing that ever happened to my kid.
As the NHL player is arraigned for conspiring to commit murder, his father speaks out. And fish dinner. The lawsuit that questions what these fish are being fed.
We cannot accept the idea of people dying on our screens every night.
Plus, Don Murray on the summit that had Bob Geldof talking again about helping Africa.
This is the neighborhood where fighting was fiercest, where the Americans met their stiffest resistance.
And a rare look inside a ravaged Iraqi city.
The National. From the Canadian Broadcasting Centre, here is Wendy Mesley.
Good evening. The United States invasion of Iraq is proving to be a Pandora's box, and the Americans can't seem to slam the lid shut. First, they weren't able to find any weapons of mass destruction. Then the surge in major fighting when it was supposed to be over. Now, adding to the crisis of credibility, allegations of torture, not to mention some cockpit video we're about to show you. It has prompted new questions about what the U.S. is doing in Iraq. Here's Neil McDonald.
Auto range.
The figures in the video are apparently Iraqis, although it's not clear what they're doing or if they're civilians. In any case, they're doomed. Then, once the first two men are disposed of, the helicopter gunner spots a third hiding under a truck. A few seconds later, the Iraqi, now apparently wounded, is spotted crawling away.
Roger, he's wounded. Hit him. Hit the truck. Hit the truck and him. Go forward of it and hit him.
There's been no official U.S. comment yet. The administration here is too busy trying to contain the growing uproar over these pictures, especially in the Arab world. The American strategy is to profess disgust, but to insist these acts of prisoner abuse were the work of an isolated few.
I want to remind the world that there's a small number of troops who acted in an illegal, improper manner.
A leaked internal military report, though, says such abuses, including sexual assault, were systemic.
Sound and fury.
And the American media, which resisted publishing the pictures for weeks, are now getting aggressive, recalling the president's constant accusations about rape and torture of prisoners under the regime of Saddam Hussein.
And now these photographs and stories show that, in fact, the U.S. military has done that to prisoners in Iraq.
Even the normally cocky defense secretary seemed disoriented today.
It is an exceptional, isolated, we hope an isolated case. And our country is our country, and it is a wonderful country.
Across town, though, senior U.S. senators were calling for a widespread inquiry.
This does not appear to be an isolated incident, and that there are additional reports in Iraq and also Afghanistan.
And dozens of former American diplomats weighed in too, in a letter saying the occupation of Iraq and George Bush's unprecedented alliance with the right-wing government of Israel has placed Americans overseas in danger.
We know that the Israeli intelligence was operating in Baghdad after the war was over. The question should be, were there any foreign interrogators among those that were recommending very, very bad treatment for the prisoners?
There is, of course, some irony in all this outrage. The Arab countries themselves are generally unsurpassed when it comes to torturing prisoners, and few armies fight a conflict without committing abuses. But the administration here sees itself as leading a global crusade against evil. And after years of lecturing the rest of the world about right and wrong, ceding moral ground doesn't come easily. Neil MacDonald, CBC News, Washington.
A Canadian citizen has now joined the list of people alleging torture in Iraq. Hassam Shaltut is currently living in Saudi Arabia. But last year he was in Iraq, where he alleges the abuse occurred at the hands of American soldiers. As Heather Hiscox reports, those accusations have not been confirmed.
This is Camp Bucca, the place where coalition forces in Iraq detain their enemy prisoners of war, and where this man, Hassam Shaltut, a Canadian citizen, was held. He claims he was beaten and tortured by U.S. forces, but that hasn't been confirmed.
From the beating and the slapping in my face, I lost the hearing in my left ear. They don't give us water to drink, so we're thirsty all the time. They put us in solitary confinement with our hands tied and sometimes our hog-tied.
For Shaltut, the road to Camp Bucca passed through Toronto. Until 3 months ago, he kept this apartment. But he also had a home in California, and from there ran a group called Rights and Freedom International, devoted to repairing Arab-American relations after the September 11th attacks. Last April, Shaltut says he was in Iraq on behalf of that group, hoping to persuade Iraqi leaders to step down before coalition forces moved in. It didn't work. Shaltut claims as he was leaving his hotel, he was arrested, accused of being Saddam Hussein's right-hand man, and held for 37 days. Now he's hired this lawyer to get compensation from the U.S. Army.
To me, it isn't a case about international relations and real politics and things like that. It's a case purely and simply about torture.
A spokesperson for Canadian Foreign Affairs confirms the department was aware Shaltut was being detained for questioning, but denies Shaltut's other allegation that Canada did nothing to help him. Heather Hiscox, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, these allegations of prisoner abuse may be the latest, but they're not the first. Since 2002, the U.S. Army has launched at least 25 criminal investigations of prisoner deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan. 2 cases are classified as homicides, but about 10 other cases remain open. The U.S. Army has launched another 10 investigations into allegations of assault in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iraqis are patrolling the streets of Fallujah. The city is calm after a month-long siege by U.S. troops. Hundreds of Iraqis were killed in the weeks of fighting. By the worst estimates, as many as 600. There have been few images from inside the ruined city, but the BBC's Caroline Hawley made the journey, and this is what she saw.
Last month, this was a football pitch. Now, it's a makeshift cemetery. Trenches dug for those killed in weeks of fighting in a city under siege. Combatants and civilians alike are buried here. At this grave, they pray for 2 baby girls. No names on the headstone. And not all Fallujah's dead are buried yet. Ali Hassan took us to his neighbour's house in the district of Jolan. He told us it was hit by 2 rockets, bringing the roof down on the families of 3 brothers, killing, he says, 36. And the bodies of 5 children are still said to be under the rubble. Were they terrorists, he asks? What did they do wrong? Women and children. Is this the democracy and the freedom the Americans brought us? Nearby, we saw several other homes that had also been flattened, the result of American airstrikes in a residential area. This is the neighborhood where fighting was fiercest, where the Americans met their stiffest resistance. But it was always an uneven battle. And there's fury in Fallujah at what people here say was an indiscriminate use of American force. The US military says it's careful to avoid civilian casualties, that it was acting only in self-defense. But try telling that to Muayyad Abbas, who just escaped being killed. The bombing was everywhere, he says. I have no weapons, I'm not part of the resistance. I just got my family out of the house and was locking the door when it was hit. It's these men that are now meant to keep the peace, Iraqi security forces, here being given new uniforms. But the old Iraqi army has also been called in to keep Fallujah under control. A year ago, the Americans were celebrating the defeat of Saddam Hussein's soldiers. Now they've had to turn to them for help. Caroline Hawley, BBC News, Fallujah.
Former American hostage Thomas Hamill is providing a glimpse of his life in captivity. Today, he spoke publicly for the first time since escaping his kidnappers in Iraq.
I'd like everyone to know that I have received excellent care, and I am looking forward to reuniting with my wife in the morning. And thank you so very much.